Hello, I'm Martin Stringer. In this riding of Sault Ste. Marie, there is one overwhelming issue, and that's the economy and unemployment. And there is one big question, and that is, can the Tories hold on to this riding? The Conservatives surprised everyone back in 2011 in the last election when they defeated the NDP and they won this riding. Sault Ste. Marie has traditionally been a riding represented by either the NDP or the Liberals. Now, the New Democrats are waging a strong campaign to try and win this riding back. And the Liberals have a very strong candidate, a very high-profile local candidate in the running. So the question is, will this riding remain Tory blue?
And it's the Conservative government that has brought Canada through one of the greatest recessions of my time. We've created 1.3 million net new jobs, the majority of them full-time, the majority of them private sector. We've done that while at the same time having the lowest federal tax burden in 50 years. And we've delivered on our promises. Every one of our promises, with the exception of one, we have delivered on. So moving forward, the best opportunity is to look at history. Our history has said, we will do this, we've done it, and the promises we're making moving forward, we will fulfill.
People are furious. People recognize that we have had, they call him the ghost. They say, no-show Hayes. People don't know who he is. It's been underrepresented, and people are upset, and they're disappointed that they would have an MP. A lot of people thought that, let's put somebody at the table, part of the representative of the government in power. Everybody realizes now, to their dismay, that Tony Martin in opposition, the NDP, did far more than Mr. Hayes has ever done.
I'm a hard worker, and you know, there might be people out there that are smarter than me. No one ever outworks me, and you know, if you ask people in the community, that's one thing that you know, I'm proud of, is I have been re-elected with a strong mandate every single time, and I'd like to think that is a testament from the people about how hard I do work for them. I will be their voice in Ottawa, because right now we have Ottawa's voice in Sault Ste. Marie.
The riding of Sault Ste. Marie contains the city itself, but also stretches 120 kilometers north along the shores of Lake Superior. The region has fishing, hunting, and tourism, but economically, a big proportion of the population in the riding still relies directly or indirectly on the steel industry. SR Steel Algoma, formerly known as Algoma Steel, is still by far the main employer. Then there are the plants producing related products like steel tubing and pipes. The city that the locals call the Soo is still very much a steel town.
I'm soliciting your support in the upcoming federal election. And any questions of me as your candidate for the Conservative Party?
No. Good luck to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
I
no problem.
hope I can count on your support.
All right.
Thanks,
well,
kindly.
you.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Conservative MP Brian Hayes is working full out to get re-elected. In 2011, he won by a margin of about 4%, or almost 1,900 votes. Hayes is a certified professional accountant, and before being elected to Parliament, he ran a small business and was a member of the Sault Ste. Marie City Council. As a Conservative incumbent, as someone who's been challenged by strong challengers, and with the polls the way they are, you must be thinking, oh boy, I really wish that they split the vote and they eat each other's breakfast, and I get re-elected because they're going to basically split that opposition of 70% against my government.
It's interesting, because I go back to 2011, and I would suggest there really wasn't a vote split per se. I mean, I defeated an incumbent, Tony Martin, you know, and by probably 1,800 or 1,900 votes, and the Liberals were way behind, and the year before that, the Liberals were way up. And it's a question of what's going on in the economy at the time, and it's a question of people's mindset. Obviously, last time around, Michael Ignatieff was not embraced in Sault Ste. Marie. So it's a question of, you know, the leadership as well as the local candidates.
But you do have, this time around, you have two leaders of the opposition parties who are polling favorably. You have all three parties who are polling neck and neck and neck. So everything seems to suggest a vote splitting.
Well, all I can worry about is myself. And quite frankly, I'm campaigning on my record. I'm campaigning on the Conservative government record. And Mr. Sheehan and Mr. Morrison can campaign on their promises, but we've delivered on our promises. And I'm confident that Sault Ste. Marie constituents will see that.
I'm Skip Morrison.
Skip Morrison is the man the NDP is pinning its hopes on to win the riding back. He's a first-time candidate, he's a steel worker, and operates a crane at the SR Steel plant. Morrison is also a licensed financial advisor. He and his wife also run a hobby farm cultivating organic trees.
This election is about change. People are worried about the job situation here, of course, but people are tired of a divisive, fear-mongering and oppressive government. This is the most important election in this country's history, I believe. Stephen Harper and his brand of government has shown us exactly how we don't want to be governed. And I think what that's going to do, and it will be borne out in the number of voters that turn out. I think the voter turnout will be higher than it has been historically for that reason. People are afraid of not the situations that the Harper government has told us about. People are afraid of the Harper government.
Hi, Johnny. Terry Sheehan, how are you? Running for the Liberals in the upcoming election. Stopping by with our friends. We got a good plan for this community. We got to get us working again, eh? With that unemployment rate of 12.4%, we got to get our people back to work. So hopefully we can count on your support.
Well, I'll think about it.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Terry Sheehan is the Liberal candidate in Sault Ste. Marie. He's a well-known name in the Sioux. He's serving his 4th term as a Sault Ste. Marie City Councillor. He's also a former school trustee and is currently a consultant for the Ontario Ministry of Training, Colleges and Universities.
Thank you for the vote.
What are you hearing on the doorsteps in terms of issues that are particular to the Sioux? What are you hearing about?
I think people have lost confidence in this government. They lost hope. Very concerned, very concerning. I have been involved in a lot of my own elections and other people's elections, and at the door, there's great concern. And, you know, one of those underlying concerns is the unemployment rate.
Yeah, is it, I mean, 12.4% unemployment. Has the Sioux had traditionally unemployment levels like that before?
It's been a long time since we've seen these days. After I graduated from university, that was one of the worst times ever. And one of the reasons why I'm running now is I'm seeing it again. Back then I made the choice to, there's just a handful, at the time when I graduated from university, there was only a handful of us left from my graduating class from high school here that were able to remain. And I decided to stay and fight for my right to you know, raise a family, to work. And eventually we turned things around. You know, the federal, provincial, city government and private industries were working well together, and we diversified the economy. I was on that committee, the diversification committee. And then what has happened recently is we went back to a bad time where the federal government doesn't have a plan to diversify the economy in Canada and Sault Ste. Marie.
Elaine De La Mattia has been reporting on the region's politics for more than 17 years for the Sault Ste. Marie Star. She says recent events have made the economy the election issue here in the Sioux.
Well, certainly with StatsCan and their recent unemployment statistics that came out that showed that this area has a 12.4% unemployment rate. That's just been huge, and all 3 candidates have capitalized on that at our debate that was held in the community last week and in their press releases.
Is that new? I mean, that high level of unemployment, did that come as a surprise to people here?
It came as a surprise in terms of the number itself, the wow factor for the 12.4%. It has not been surprising that unemployment rates have increased. We've seen that with recent layoffs over the last 6 months or so at Tenaris Tubes, and there's some indicators in the community that unemployment has been increasing, but nobody thought it would have jumped, you know, more than double, almost triple what it was from August of 2014 to August of 2015. And certainly you've got your Liberal and your NDP candidates who are capitalizing on that right now.
A lot of people are pointing to very, very dramatic statistics that came out from StatsCan just a little while ago. 12.4% unemployment. Yeah. You are the incumbent MP, or the outgoing MP, or the fellow running for a job again. How do you respond to that? I mean, that's not a figure you like to hear about.
Well, actually, the response is quite simple. The unemployment rate figures, jumping from 5-point-something% to 12.2%, are based on a survey of 205 households in Sault Ste. Marie. So an Algoma University professor has actually questioned those figures. And with respect to the 8,000 job losses that occurred between November 2014 and now, the supposed 8,000 job figures, I'm not going to question StatsCan at this stage of the game, but suffice to say, City Council brought forward an expert to City Council to question those figures, and there was a lot of skepticism as to the truth behind those figures. And even one of our former NDP MPs, Steve Butland, who's on City Council, was saying that in all reality, if our city of Sault Ste. Marie would have lost 20% of its workforce in less than a year, I think we'd be hearing it.
So does that mean, so is your message that everything's going fine, or?
My message in Sault Ste. Marie is that under the Conservative government, it's going a lot better than it would if we were to impose the high tax agenda of the Liberals and the NDP.
I'm Terry Sheehan, stopping by.
Yes, Terry.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Lena.
Terry.
Lena, pleasure.
Pretty well anyway.
Pleasure to meet you. I wrote with Sam trying to, get the support going. We've got to get this community working again,
Absolutely.
The incumbent MP, Brian Hayes, is rhyming off a list of, in fact, it's all on the buses. He's got bus signs that are decals on the buses, all the buses here, about investments in the port infrastructure, investments in other infrastructure, investments, he says, in rail, an interest-free loan to SR Steel, the main steel company here. He says he's been working for the people of Sault Ste. Marie. How do you respond to that?
Well, that's the 11th hour. That's not the full 4 years. A lot of these announcements were just weeks before the election was called, and the people at the door are not fooled by that. They are not fooled. They're saying, okay, where have you been for 4 years? They pulled funding from FedNorm, which is our regional economic development agency. 8.5 million just last year sent back to Treasury. Well, that money should have been spent on economic development for projects to be realized now. So those announcements, and the infrastructure announcements they announced were federal buildings, federal buildings that they're responsible for. They've let them deteriorate for 10 years, including our parks thing, where the steps are crumbling. And there's actually a danger there in the armories, in the federal scientific lab. So these are all federal buildings that they're announcing a week or weeks before the election. But why weren't they looking after them for the last 10 years is the question. Our plan to invest in infrastructure is a broader scope.
Your opponents, the two opponents, are saying in announcements like the Port of Algoma, they're saying these are all 11th hour conversions, that they've all come within weeks of the election call and the election campaign, and what they're saying is, where were you for the last 4 years?
Well, that's absolutely ridiculous. For starters, the Port of Algoma announcement was about 2 years ago, and the other infrastructure announcements, that was part of a $5.8 billion federal infrastructure project that the Prime Minister actually announced in November, but all of the applications had to be vetted. And fortunately, Sault Ste. Marie has some federal infrastructure. I mean, we have the Parks Canada building, we have the armories, and it's just, they were vetted, and it's a matter of timing. If they want to call that 11th hour electioneering, they can call it what it is. As a member of Parliament, I assure you, I fought for those investments, and the government has come on board. So I'm very pleased.
Cara Flanagan is a Green candidate in Sault Ste. Marie. She's a health inspector for the Algoma Public Health Authority. She ran in last year's provincial election, but this is her first time running federally for the Greens. In this riding, the Greens got about 2% of the vote in 2011. Why are you running for the Greens?
I'm running for the Green Party because I believe in their platform, and we need to take climate change seriously. And I've looked at the other parties. They don't seem to appreciate the seriousness of the whole issue and how it will affect our social fabric. We have to leave the world a better place for our children. We have to be able to stop what's happening. And I didn't want to wait on the sidelines for someone else to do it. So I had to step up.
Now, in this riding, is it tough to be a Green? Is it tough to represent the Green? This is a riding that's heavily dependent on resource-based industries, and it's a steel city. Is it tough to carry the Green message?
Yes, it is. However, we do know here that we have so much to protect. And so we have to be good stewards for our forests and our water, because we're abundant in that. And getting the message out, I know that people don't want pollution, they don't want waste, they don't want energy loss. So our plan is to shift taxes to tax the things that we don't want, waste and pollution and greenhouse gases, and return the fees from the carbon back to the Canadian people. And that will encourage businesses and industry to look for better ways and safer ways and healthier ways to do things.
When you do get support, who do you think it comes from? Because, I mean, a lot of people, there's been this false idea that, the Greens just draw from, say, NDP support or left of centre support. Where do you think your support comes from when you do get voters?
Well, Green supporters come from all three parties, and especially from people who don't vote. So you can't say that we're splitting the vote or anything, because we draw equally from the parties. And I like that we encourage people to get involved, and the people who don't vote do show up and vote for us.
A lot of this election is about, there's a real coalescing of people who they don't want to see the Harper government anymore, and there's, people are expressing a desire for change. Do you get squeezed when people say, well, we want to vote to make sure that the Harper government's defeated? Do you get squeezed out of the equation when that happens?
I don't think so, because our research has shown that when Greens are on the ballot, we encourage people to come out to vote. So when there's 40% of people aren't voting at all. So let's get out. We can make a serious difference with those people participating. And if you are protesting and don't vote because you're protesting, that's not protest, that's surrender.
11% of the population in this riding is Aboriginal. That means, theoretically, Native voters could play a role in any election here. But traditionally, there has been a low participation rate in Aboriginal communities. Tyrone Soulier is from the Garden River First Nation in the riding. He launched a movement which has taken off across the country. It's called Rally the First Nations Vote, and is trying to mobilize Native voters on October 19th.
What we're doing is we're organizing to the best of our ability so that we can register as many as we can. And these last 4 weeks before the federal election is our big push. We're having meetings as often as we can in the area.
What are the obstacles to registering people?
Just information. With First Nations issues, it's complex because First Nations historically have not been big voters, never had a big voter turnout for many issues, many reasons. But we're working on clarifying everything for the ones who have not voted before, and we're working on giving them the information in terms of how important this election is.
I guess the big question is now then, I know up in Lac Seul in Kenora riding, a lot of the First Nations were getting together. They were having a common meeting. They were going to decide on whether or not they're going to have a common approach. They were going to decide on whether or not they're going to endorse one of these parties, NDP, Liberal. You're obviously not supporting the Conservatives. Are you in a position, have you decided whether you're going to have a common approach, and B, whether you're going to endorse one of the parties?
We will have a common approach, and we will endorse one of the parties.
When?
We'll let that information out closer to the election, probably 2 weeks before the election, so that we can have all of the people involved aware of our position, at least. The Rally the First Nation Votes position.
I'm Skip Morrison.
Oh, hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I'm just out door knocking, and they're filming me working diligently on the Rankin Reserve for Batchewana, and this is the information sheet that I gave to Dean Sayers and said, is it okay if we come on to your traditional territory? And he said yes.
Okay,
and
great.
I think he was actually impressed, because he said he's even thinking about voting this time. So
I'm definitely going to vote this time. I'm just not sure who I'm going to vote for. I know who I'm not going to vote for.
yes.
I'm sure you hear that a lot
Yes,
here. But,
yes, I do. And
I know I still have a few more weeks to decide.
right, we'll take this. That'll help, I'm sure. Read it over, and we'll give it some thought.
Okay.
Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
NDP candidate Skip Morrison is aware of the potential support among Native voters in this riding. On this day, he's asked for and received from the band chief permission to go door to door in the Batchewana First Nation.
Thank you very much. Okay, Chimigwech.
Thank you.
We have a moral, an ethical, and a legal responsibility, an obligation to treat the First Nations with the respect that they deserve. And the NDP believes that there are at least 7 essential things. And I've put this forward to the chief here, who gave me permission to come on to the reserve, gave me permission to post signs, and for the first time in years has said, we will put a polling station on the reserve. Okay. Chief Sayers, has said for the first time ever, he's considering voting. So I take pride in building that relationship, that bit of trust already. I've told them that we will repeal Bill C-51. We will, within 100 days, launch an inquiry into murdered and missing Aboriginal women. We will implement the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous People. We will create a cabinet-level committee reporting directly to Tom Mulcair as Prime Minister, where all legislation respects the inherent rights and treaty rights of First Nations people. So those are the types of respectful promises that First Nations people want, expect, and deserve. And I'm proud to do this.
Let's look at another issue then, the gun registry. The Conservatives in Kenora, Conservatives in Thunder Bay, and I'm wondering if they're doing it here. Are they talking about Liberals and NDP bringing back the gun registry, and are you going to?
Well, they're not painting the Liberals with that same brush, but they have gone to the extent of mailing out to every single household the misquote that the NDP are planning to bring it back.
So are you planning to bring it back?
Oh, categorically, no. Tom Mulcair has stated in London, July 24th of this summer, in Thunder Bay, July 26th, that there is no intention of bringing back a wasteful, unnecessary program that was a Liberal failure, and the NDP has no intention of bringing it back.
Is that going to be a harmful bugaboo, though? Because some people said that when Tony Martin, the very, very well-known, successful, well-respected MP, lost in 2011 in the last election here, your predecessor, when he lost, a lot of people said it was because of the gun registry issue.
It had an effect. I'm a gun owner, and I registered my rifles, as did a lot of other sportsmen here. It's an important issue. It was a policy taken 4 years ago that was corrected with Tom Mulcair. It was corrected with people like myself, John Rafferty, Charlie Angus. We've all said we think this is not a necessary program. There are enough regulations in place already for safe handling and registrations of.
Is it still hurting you though in this riding? The NDP, I'm saying.
It's not coming up often, but it is still a possible concern for a small minority of people who wonder. Well, the Conservatives are saying that you're bringing it back, and I said, well, they've also lied to you about so many other things. Why do you believe that one?
The gun registry. I've seen at least one brochure suggesting that the NDP, according to your brochures, is going to return or is going to revive the gun registry.
Yes.
You won in 2011. Part of it, I think you would even admit, part of it was on the strength of that issue.
Yes.
And the promise of the Conservative government to scrap the gun registry. You
correct.
scrapped it. Anyway, long story short, is it fair to continue to accuse the NDP of wanting to bring the gun registry back? There are people say they're not going to.
That's what their people say, but we have a direct quote from Mr. Mulcair in 2014 saying he was going to bring it back. The only place he really said he wasn't going to bring it back, strangely enough, is when he was campaigning in Thunder Bay, where 97% of the population of Thunder Bay supported eliminating the long gun registry, which is what we've done. I sat across from the NDP in the House of Commons and listened to them vehemently oppose eliminating the long gun registry and getting rid of the records. It was just a sight to behold. So people will choose to believe what they'll choose to believe. I believe the NDP have demonstrated that they will bring back, if not the long gun registry, they will bring back a form of the long gun registry.
Is it still a big issue? In other words, is it an effective issue for you in this campaign?
I believe so. I'm hearing it, and obviously when I campaigned in 2011, that was one of my promises. We will abolish the wasteful and ineffective long gun registry.
So what about local journalist and that longtime observer of the Sault Ste. Marie political scene, Elaine de la Mattia? What does she make of the race in this riding?
It's going to be a tight race. It's a tight race, definitely. You have two candidates, both our Conservative incumbent Brian Hayes and our Liberal challenger Terry Sheehan, who are both well-known people in the community. Both of them started their political roots at City Hall. They were both councillors. Terry is still a councillor. They've got their inroads that way. Our NDP candidate, Skip Morrison, is new on the scene. He has his followers with certainly being a financial advisor and an SR Steel employee himself. He's making it interesting. He uses our former MP and former MPP, Tony Martin, a lot in his campaign material, when he's out on the streets, because of course that's a name that everybody recognizes in the Sault Ste. Marie voters have their own opinions on things. It depends what's hot, what's not at the time. I don't believe in polls in the city because they can change from day to day, and they can change drastically from day to day, and they can be totally different than the national picture.
Do you think people are paying more attention to the national picture or to the local representative and local candidates?
I think that's a hard one to say. I think it depends on who you are. I think right now local is probably taking priority. That unemployment rate is very, very high. All three candidates are capitalizing on that, and I think that's what resonates with voters right now.
Well, the last word goes to some Sault Ste. Marie voters. What do they think of the election campaign so far? What's important to them, and have they made up their mind?
My biggest issue for this election is the economy and what's going to happen to Canada's economy, our free trade arrangements, and jobs for Canada.
Are you leaning any one way or another here in this riding?
I am, but I keep that personal.
Do you think there'll be any change, or do you think the people here will decide to stay with the Conservative MP, with Brian Hayes?
I think it's hard to say. It's across the country we're seeing quite a tight race, and I think the same thing's being repeated here in Sault Ste. Marie.
Well, obviously, I think the number one thing is the economy is the most important issue that is out there, and obviously the Syrian refugee crisis. I think there's got to be a better way of helping those people. When you see those images on TV, we have to do more. You know what I mean? We're actually a rich country, and I think there's got to be a way that we can speed up the process to make it better.
Well, are you leaning one way or another when you watch the election campaign?
No, not really. It's been interesting debates. They all have their good points or whatever, but I just, I'm kind of leaning towards the Conservatives only because I don't believe we need to go any further in debt.
I'm curious to see what happens with those middle-income earners and what the government's going to do for us, considering we're carrying the load for, a good portion of the province.
Are you leaning any one way or another when it comes to voting?
No.
Undecided?
Yes.
Actually, our natural resources, for Sault Ste. Marie, it's a multi-billion-dollar business area. We need investors up here. Ministry of Natural Resources has got its own generation system for fishing, wildlife, everything, all around. It's a nice area.
As myself, I'd like to vote NDP, tell you the truth. I like to see something done with the middle class, where people feel more, like they've got more say, and at the end of the day, they have more, they got more dollars to basically spend.
I'm very upset, and have been for a couple of years now, that the Harper government has muzzled the scientists. I've rubbed shoulders with scientists and people in the environmental field all my life, and it's very, very difficult for them not only to get funding, but to get their information out there where it actually can be applied. And so I don't think I'd want to go with the Harper government, even though I could probably pick some pluses that they're doing.
In Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, for CPAC, I'm Martin Stringer.